So we're reading today from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 9, and on the board today we have verse 53, which we will read together. But since there is no purport to this verse, I will continue to verse 54, which also does not have a purport. So I'll end with text 55, which also concludes this chapter. So, just to get the context of it, I will just read through it, all three verses once, and then at the end we can recite the 53 together. We'll do it like that. Tatyam atmanastvastre varma vedyam atmakam visvarupaya yatpada Vasta yatvam adastata. Translation. The Dhancha's invisible protective covering, known as the Narayan Kavach, was given to Tvasta, who delivered it to his son Vishvarupa, from whom you have received it. Because of this Narayan Kavacha, the deity's body is now very strong. You should therefore beg him for his body. Text 54. Yusmabhyam yachito svibhyam dharmabhyam gani tasyati tathastar ayuthashishto visvakarma vinirmita yena vitta shirovarta matteja upabrimata. When the Ashwini Kumaras beg for the Dhancha's body on your behalf, he will surely give it because of affection. Do not doubt this, for the Dhancha is very experienced in religious understanding. When the Dhancha awards you his body, Vishvakarma will prepare a thunderbolt from his bones. This thunderbolt will certainly kill Vritasura, because it will be invested with my power. Text 55. Tasmin vinihate yuyam tejustra hasampada bhuya prapsata padrambo nahim shanti chamatparam. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. When Vritasura is killed because of my spiritual strength, you will regain your strength, weapons and wealth. Thus there will be all good fortune for all of you. Although Vritasura can destroy all the three worlds, do not fear that he will harm you. He is also a devotee and will never be envious of you. Purport. A devotee of the Lord is never envious of anyone. What to speak of other devotees? As revealed later, Vritasura was also a devotee. Therefore, he was not expected to be envious of the demigods. Indeed, of his own accord, he would try to benefit the demigods. A devotee does not hesitate to give up his own body for a better cause. Janaka Pandit said, Sannimitte varang chago vinashe niyate sati. After all one's material possessions, including his body, will be destroyed in due course of time. Therefore, if the body and other possessions can be utilized for a better cause, a devotee never hesitates to give up even his own body. Because Lord Vishnu wanted to save the demigods, Vritrasura, even though able to swallow the three worlds, would agree to be killed by the demigods. For a devotee there is no difference between living and dying, because in this life a devotee engages in devotional service and after giving up his body, he engages in the same service in the spiritual world. His devotional service is never hindered. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports to the 9th chapter, 6th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Appearance of the Demon Vritrasura. So now we can go through the 53 together. You kindly repeat after me. Tatyan atharvanastvastre Tatyan atharvanastvastre Tatyan atharvanastvastre Varma vedyam madatmakam Varma vedyam madatmakam Vishvarupaya yatprada Vishvarupaya yatprada Svastaya tvam adastata Svastaya tvam adastata Dadyanatharvanastvastre Varma vedyam madatmakam Vishvarupaya yatprada Svastaya tvam adastata Please stand.
Dadyan atharvanastvastre Varma vedyam madatmakam Vishvarupaya yatprada Svastaya tvam adastata
Dadyan atharvanastvastre
Dadyan atharvanastvastre
Varma vedyam madatmakam
Varma vedyam madatmakam
Vishvarupaya yatprada
Vishvarupaya yatprada
Svastaya tvam adhastata
Svastaya tvam adhastata Dadyan atharvanastvastre
Dadyan atharvanastvastre
Varma vedyam madatmakam
Varma vedyam madatmakam
Vishvarupaya yatprada
Vishvarupaya yatprada
Svastaya tvam adhastata
Svastaya tvam adhastata
Dadyan atharvanastvastre
Dadyan atharvanastvastre
Varma vedyam madatmakam
Varma vedyam madatmakam
Vishvarupaya yatprada
Vishvarupaya yatprada
Svastaya tvam adhastata
Svastaya tvam adhastata Dadyam
Dadyancha
Dadyancha
Atharvanaha, the son of Atharva,
Son of Atharva
Tvastre, unto Tvasta, Varma, the protective covering known as Narayan Kavach,
The protective covering known as Narayan Kavach
Abhedyam,
Abhedyam
invincible,
Invincible
Mat-atmakam,
Madatmakam
consisting of myself,
Consisting of myself
Vishvarupaya,
Vishvarupaya
unto Vishvarupa,
Unto Vishvarupa
Yat,
That
which,
which
Pradat,
Pradat
delivered,
Delivered
Tvasta,
Tvasta
Tvasta, Yat,
Yat
which,
Which
Tvam,
Tvam
you,
You
Adha, received,
Received
Tatam,
Tata
from him.
From him.
We read the translation again. Dadyancha's invisible protective covering, known as the Narayan Kavach, was given to Tvasta, who delivered it to his son Vishvarupa, from whom you have received it Because of this Narayan Kavach, Dadichi's body is now very strong. You should therefore beg him for his body. So I thought it interesting to address this point that the Aswini Kumaras, they will be asked to ask Dadichi or the Jancha of his body. So I thought it interesting to speak why exactly were they selected to perform this inquiry, to ask, to put this request. So it's very interesting points we can speak about in this connection. And as we know, Keshav Priyamata yesterday spoke about that, they approach Dadansha for Brahma Vidya. So you can say that they're his disciples. They are Sishyas in one sense, they have received transcendental knowledge from him. So, as we know, the relationship between the disciple and spiritual master, when it properly functions like that, as Krishna says, Tad Vidi Panipratena, approach a spiritual master and put forward submissive inquiries and render service. So actually, one pleases the spiritual master, one submits to the spiritual master and renders service, then the spiritual master is pleased to impart the knowledge. So Dadansha, he was pleased to impart this knowledge unto the Aswini Kumaras. So that means that they must have approached him properly and satisfied him by service and submissive inquiry. So when that is there is a rasa between the disciple and spiritual master, which is one of a subordinate to a superior. So then the spiritual master, he becomes affectionate towards the disciple, as well as the disciple becomes affectionate to the spiritual master. And it's interesting because we have another incident of this which will serve a valuable purpose later on when we connect it. And we also find it in Krishna's Leela, when Shri Balaram he decided to stay back at Mithila. As we know, at one point Shatadanva, he was chased by Krishna and Balaram when he fled with the Shamantaka jewel after having murdered Satyajit. So while he was fleeing, Shatadanva was fleeing on his horse with the Shamantaka jewel and chased by Krishna. They reached as far as Mithila. There, while running on foot, because his horse, which is a long story also, the horse will not run anymore. Satadhanva's horse will not run anymore, so he got down on foot and ran. And Krishna ran behind him. And the whole chase, it ended at Mithila, where Shatadanva was killed by Krishna, who released his Sudarshan chakra. And then, since the Shamantaka jewel was not to be found on Shatadanva's body, Krishna, he returned to Dwaraka to find where the jewel was. But Balaram, he decided to stay for some time with the king of Mithila, Maharaj Janak. And it is said that Balaram, he stayed for several years in the city of King Janak. And while at that time Sri Balaram, he was staying at Mithila, then Duryodhana, he took the opportunity to come and see Lord Balaram in order to learn the art of mace fighting, like that. So he submitted himself and pleased Balaram so that he would agree to give that knowledge, to impart that knowledge onto him. So there developed a rasa. There was some affectionate exchange between Lord Balaram and Duryodhana. And Lord Balaram, he didn't forget that. And this also, you can see how that came out in the Battle of Kurukshetra, when there was supposed to be this great war. Then Balaram, he didn't want to take part in it, because he could see that Duryodhana was on the other side, and there's a lot of, he didn't want to engage himself in that war. So instead he went on a pilgrimage. As you know, this story is connected with Brahmaharshana Sutta, the killing of Brahmaharshana Sutta. And we also see it when Balaram, after having been on pilgrimage, having toured whole India on pilgrimage, when he came on the last day of the Battle of Kurukshetra, when Bhimasen was fighting Duryodhana in mace fighting, as a duel was there. And then Balaram, he tried to stop it, because he didn't want to see Duryodhana killed. So he tried to stop the fighting between the two, but they would not cease. So Balaram, he also became affectionate to Duryodhana, and so the point is that this relationship between spiritual master and disciple is that the spiritual master developed a softness for the disciple because of his submissive because he has submitted himself and rendered service. So then there arises some affection between the spiritual master. There arises affection between the spiritual master and disciple. And so that was the first thing I thought was interesting to mention. I also read a little bit further, and this will come now in the this will be connected to verse number 55. And it is stated about Vritasura, that although Vritasura can destroy all the three worlds, do not fear that he will harm you. He is also a devotee and will never be envious of you. So I particularly caught note of this statement, that Vritasura will not harm the demigods because he is a devotee. So there's also actually a valuable practical instruction for us that a devotee is not harmful. No, he doesn't harm anyone. As you know, that Krishna is described in the Bhagavad Gita as a well-wishing friend of all living entities. So a devotee, he follows suit by seeing Samadarshana, seeing equally all living beings, and becoming a well-wishing friend to all living entities. As you know, this behavior is exemplified in the lives of many devotees, as Vasudev Dutt, who prays, let everybody be delivered and go back to the spiritual world, but let me take all their karma, let me take all their sinful activities and suffer perpetually, so that they can go back. So well-wishing friend. And this point, I will say, this has been brought to my attention previously, that this, at least, practically, we may not be up to the standard, actually, to act as a well-wishing friend to all living entities. We may not actually know how to do that, or simply, we're not in that mode of behavior constantly. But at least at this point, we should make sure that we never fail, that we should never harm anyone. What to speak of being a well-wishing friend, but here it said that should not be harmful. And as we know, we can harm other living entities by various ways. Either we say something that causes harm to someone, or we neglect someone. Actually, there's three kinds of offenses, as we know. This incident with Bhrigu Muni, who came and wanted to see who was the Supreme Personality of Godhead. amongst Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma, and Lord Vishnu. So I believe he first came to Lord Brahma, which is actually his father. Brahma is the father of Bhrigu Muni. So when he came to Brahma, he didn't greet him. He didn't offer any kind of greeting. He just came in, the presence of his father, and just didn't say anything. So like that, that's said to be an offense in the mind. Like you neglect someone like that, offensively. So that's offense in the mind. And so then Brahma got angry. And then Bhrigu Muni concluded that Lord Brahma is not the supreme. And from Brahma he went to Lord Shiva and started criticizing for being dirty. Lord Shiva was happy to see his brother, so Lord Shiva wanted to embrace Bhrigu Muni. But Bhrigu Muni said, "Don't touch me. You are full of ashes from the burial ground, or from the crematorium. You're an unclean person, so don't touch me." So that was an offense with words. You spoke offensively, so that's also causing harm. Neglecting someone and speaking harshly like that, offensive speech, that's also causes harm. So Lord Shiva became very angry and wanted to kill Bhrigu Muni like that because of that, but Parvati stopped him. And then Bhrigu Muni concluded, well, Lord Shiva is also not the Supreme Person, because Supreme Person will not get angry like that on account of that. We were self-satisfied, Atmaram, satisfied in himself. So he proceeded to Lord Vishnu, and when he entered into the presence of Lord Vishnu, he proceeded directly to Lord Vishnu and kicked him on the chest. Gave him a good kick on the chest. Lord Vishnu folded his hands and asked him whether he had happened to hurt his foot, because he explained that his chest is as hard as a thunderbolt, so he was very much concerned that Bhrigu Muni might have hurt himself in that attempt to kick him. So, but Lakshmi Devi, she was furious, and she cursed the Brahmanas, the Brahmana class, to always remain in poverty. She didn't want anything to do with them coming in and kicking Vishnu on the chest. So, but then Bhrigu Muni, he concluded that even though he offended Lord Vishnu in the most severe way, because out of the three ways we can harm someone, by neglect and by harsh words, the third and most severe offense is by corporal, you can say by harming something with our body, violence, physical violence. So actually Bhrigu Muni, he perpetrated physical violence toward the Supreme Personality of God, but because he didn't become angry, he didn't take it, he didn't all take it like as an offense, so to speak. So then he concluded, well, he's Atmaram, he's fully satisfied. He's not under control of anger, he's the master of anger, so he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That was Bhrigu Muni's conclusion. So there are these three ways in which we can harm others, and we should make it a point, actually, that not to harm others. And we must be competent to see, actually, how our behavior comes to harm others and stop that. What to speak of being a well-wishing friend? As long as we are harming others, then forget about the well-wishing friend, really. It's not, we're not on that level. We should first see that our behavior is not harming others and take care of that. And then, by Krishna's grace, we may become in the mode of acting as a well-wishing friend. But first comes first. So these are some areas where we can measure our own behavior, how we are dealing with others, and if we actually sometimes come to harm someone. So this was the second point. And the last thing actually, which I would which is just following this, is that it stated in the last sentence of this verse number 55, that Vritasura is also a devotee and will never be envious of you. So in this connection, as we know, envy is one of the anarthas, or one of the material qualities which one just simply has to get rid of. And it's an interesting quality because you can't engage it. It is said that anger and lust and greed, so these material tendencies or material qualities, you may say, they can be engaged somehow, they can be dovetailed in devotional service. But the point about envy is that it can't be dovetailed really. It's a quality one simply has to get rid of. So then the question is, how to get rid of envy? What's the scientific process we can engage in order to get rid of envy? So on this point, I thought we could try to look into. And if you look about this point about envy, Srimad Bhagavatam, it speaks actually a verse which tells you exactly how you get rid of envy. So that's quite interesting. And this verse is actually found in the seventh canto, and we'll find it in the 15th chapter, verse 23, and it goes, Vikshikya Shukha Maha Dangam Mahad Upasaya Yugantarayan Maunena Hingshankama Janihaya. And this translates to, by discussing spiritual knowledge, one can conquer lamentation and illusion. By serving a great devotee, one can become prideless. By keeping silent, one can avoid obstacles on the path of mystic yoga. And simply by stopping sense gratification, one can conquer envy. So here is it. Simply by stopping sense gratification, one can conquer envy. So what does sense gratification have to do with envy? We might ask. And actually we find it that we are envious of others because they have something to gratify their senses that we don't, and we feel sorry that that person has that thing to gratify his senses while we don't have it. So because we want to have sense gratification, we are eager for sense gratification, and we observe others, they have sense gratification that we don't have. We are not Atma Rama. So we become envious of other sense gratification. So it all boils down to this feeling of envy is there simply because we are eager for sense gratification. That's actually the whole point. And so we may say, alright, so I'm not Atma Ram yet. I have some desires for sense gratification, either gross or subtle. So sometimes because I feel envy, so there must be some desire. There must be some desire for sense gratification, either may it be gross